Hello and welcome to another tutorial. So today I'll be showing you how to create these hybrid garage drums. My approach with this tutorial is going to be a little different to my previous grime drum programming video. I'll be analysing some drums which I've created to give you an idea of how I approach drum programming, particularly in terms of layering. So the reason why I call these drums hybrid garage drums, well, there are two separate reasons. So the first is that the rhythms I use are certainly garage influenced, but I'm also incorporating elements of grime, breakbeat, and other styles of club music. And secondly, because I'm layering electronic and acoustic drum samples together. So this is the drums soloed without the kick. So I'm going to break down the electronic percussion first, and then I'm going to talk about the acoustic percussion in the form of breakbeats, and also my approach to layering. I will make some of the MIDI files available below the video. So if you want to try and recreate this pattern, you can. So firstly, we're going to look at the clap pattern. So the clap plays a breakbeat influenced pattern with these sort of grime style 16th note fills. If we look at the drum rack, I haven't really done any processing, but what I have done is I put the clap on one voice, so only one of them can trigger at a time, and I've also heavily enveloped them by taking the sustain all the way down. And that's just because I want to keep the sample tight and I want to keep the beat as minimal as possible. For the hats, if you look at the pattern, we can see that I've used a 16th note grid to program the hi-hats. Because I've taken a minimalist approach with this, none of the hi-hats overlap or trigger at the same time. All we've got here is a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat. And if we look at the MIDI together, we can see even with the claps, no two samples will trigger at the same time. In terms of the processing for the hats, I've done, well, a bit more. If we look at the drum rack first, we can see, change this to 1. We can see that both hats have been heavily enveloped. The sustain has been taken down to tighten them up, both between kind of 400 and 500 milliseconds. I also believe that I've done a little bit of panning here. In this instance, yeah, they're panned to separate sides. I've also used the choke group here. You can see they're in the same choke group 1. What the choke group does is it means that whenever a new sample is triggered, Ableton will kill the previous sample. So again, this is just to keep things tight and minimal. In terms of processing, you can see that I've applied a saturated. This is just to emphasize the high frequencies and to give things a bit more aggression and to put a little bit of the decay back in as well, which I took away with the enveloping. And here that makes a huge difference. I've also got a bit of redux, bit crusher, very, very mild, and I've got some vinyl distortion too. And then I've just got an EQ to take out any unwanted frequencies and to make sure that the hi-hats are just kind of composed of high frequencies. This is the hats and the clap together. Now for the other layers, so the breakbeat. What I've done with the breakbeat is I have sliced to MIDI using the transients. So I'll link a tutorial from another channel on how to do this if you're not sure how to do this, but I won't be covering it in this specific video. What I have done is, as with the other samples, I've heavily enveloped the break by taking the sustain all the way down. So this is with the sustain up. You can hear that this helps tighten up the drum break. I've also, in this case, I have pitched up this breakbeat by 4 semitones just to make it sound a little bit brighter mainly without having to use EQ. A trick that I use here as well is that I've actually got 2 versions of the same break, but this one is an octave below. So this one is -8 semitones. And you can hear that that really helps to thicken things up. You just want to be aware with the low breakbeat that for some reason shifting certain audio down a few semitones can create some sort of nasty high-end digital sounding stuff. So I'm just EQing that out with that low pass filter. I've also added a breakbeat snare underneath for a bit more aggression. Again, I imagine it's pretty heavily enveloped, even more so than the other elements. This is everything together. One of the things you'll notice here as well is that whenever the open hi-hats trigger, I've basically cut the break. And again, this is just because I like to keep things as minimal as possible. Also, the closed hi-hats are layered over the breakbeat to help thicken things up. Another thing I've done, and part of what gives this beat its groovy kind of characteristic, is that I've used this 2-step groove on it. I've quantized everything 100% to 16th notes, including the breakbeat. And then I put the timing up to 30% and the velocity to 20%. If I delete this, you can hear how much of a big difference it makes. And then if I put it back, you can really hear that the groove is an important part of what makes the beat sound garagey. As for the processing, so I've grouped these tracks together in a sort of drums group. And all I've done for processing here is that I have done some parallel saturation and I've turned it down a bit and I've maxed out the saturation knob. And I've also filtered out some sort of kind of nasty high-end stuff. Helps it sound a bit more gritty, helps kind of glue it together. You can hear if I turn it off, it's just not really the same beat. You can really hear the saturation helps kind of bring everything together and acts as the glue, making sort of these different layers sound almost like one instrument. And I've added an EQ3 afterwards just to filter out some of the high bass and sub bass because you don't really need any of that. And I've mixed some reverb in, and this helps the drums sound like they're in a real space. Sort of kind of 2-steppy kick pattern as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you found this informative. Normally I would make the beat, but I thought I'd find this really, really difficult to remake this exact beat perfectly. So I thought it'd be better me kind of picking apart what I've done and yeah, analyzing the way that I did things. I think the way I actually started here was that I had the breakbeat stuff, but I felt that it actually needed a bit more bite and needed a kind of electronic element to it as well, just to kind of beef things up. And also I think to add an element of brightness as well. So this is without the electronic percussion. And then with, and you can hear that makes obviously such a difference. It kind of brings things out. And then the processing kind of glues things together really nicely. So please do subscribe. I'm going to do a sample pack soon with loops and samples, probably kind of similar to this and with other genres of UK bass music as well. So please keep your eyes peeled for that. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.